The challenge. The crowd roared with anticipation as Princess Kalia strode confidently into the fighting pit. Metal panels gleamed beneath her feet, reflecting the blue glow emanating from the veins of her dark battle armor. The royal insignia of House Traxian adorned her breastplate, a symbol feared throughout 3-star systems. Her emerald skin caught the light as she tossed her silvery hair over her shoulder, scanning the arena with eyes the color of polished jade. The assembled Traxians fell silent as she raised one armored hand. "My loyal subjects," she called out, her voice carrying across the arena, "today I demonstrate once again why the Traxian Empire stands supreme among the stars." The crowd erupted in cheers, their collective voice like thunder in the enclosed space. Kalia allowed herself a small smile before turning toward the entrance where her opponent would emerge. When the human male finally stepped into the arena, Kalia couldn't help but laugh. He was tall for his species, with broad shoulders and a face that might have been considered handsome by human standards, but it wasn't his appearance that amused her, it was his weapon. In his hands, he held what appeared to be 2 wooden sticks connected by a short chain. "This is the champion of Earth," she called out mockingly. "A man with sticks on a string?" The human didn't respond immediately. His dark clothing, simple and unadorned, contrasted sharply with her elaborate armor. His expression remained neutral, almost bored, as he walked to the center of the arena. "I didn't ask for this fight," he said quietly, his voice somehow carrying despite his low volume. "I'm just a diplomatic envoy. Let me return to my ship, and we can discuss the treaty as planned." Kalia circled him, her armor humming with power. "The mighty Earth Confederation sends a diplomat who carries toys as weapons. Perhaps your people aren't the warriors we've heard tales of." The human, Chad Russell, according to the announcement, sighed deeply. "Princess, there's no need for this. I came in peace." "Peace?" Kalia spat the word. "Your kind spreads across the galaxy like a plague, claiming territories that rightfully belong to more advanced civilizations. Today my people will see the truth about humans, that you're nothing special." The crowd's jeers grew louder, and Kalia could see Chad glancing around, noting the hostility in every face. She'd orchestrated this perfectly. The human delegation had arrived expecting negotiations, not combat. But Traxian tradition allowed the royal family to challenge any foreign dignitary to prove their worth before discussions could begin. Most visitors knew this and brought champions. The humans, in their arrogance or ignorance, had not. "You really think you can defeat me with those pathetic sticks, human?" she laughed, drawing her ceremonial blade, a curved sword that glowed with the same blue energy as her armor. Chad looked at his nunchaku, then back at her. "Last chance, princess. I'm not here to fight." "Too bad," she replied, her smile predatory, "because I am." Without warning, she lunged forward, her blade slicing through the air where Chad's head had been a moment before. But the human had already moved, stepping aside with surprising grace. What happened next occurred so quickly that many in the audience would later argue about the sequence of events. Chad's wooden weapons became a blur as he spun them around his body. The princess attacked again and again, each strike meeting only air or the spinning wooden sticks. Kalia grew frustrated. Her armor enhanced her strength and speed, yet she couldn't land a single blow. Worse, the human hadn't even attempted to strike her, he was merely defending, making her look increasingly foolish. "Fight back, coward," she snarled, launching a particularly vicious attack. Chad finally obliged. The nunchaku suddenly changed direction, wrapping around her sword arm. Before she could react, he pulled, throwing her off balance. As she stumbled, his weapon struck with precision, not at her body, but at specific points on her armor. 1 minute after the fight began, a loud crack echoed through the arena. Blue energy sparked wildly as hairline fractures appeared across Kalia's breastplate. Another strike, and the fractures spread. A third, and her pauldron shattered completely. Piece by piece, her supposedly impenetrable armor cracked and fell away, leaving her kneeling in the center of the arena in her undersuit, surrounded by fragments of metal and fading blue light. The silence in the arena was absolute. Chad stood over her, nunchaku hanging loosely at his side. I studied Traxian battle armor before I came. The power nodes are your weakness, hit them in the right sequence, and the whole system fails. Kalia looked up, meeting his eyes for the first time without contempt. What she saw wasn't triumph or mockery, but a quiet dignity that made her breath catch. How? She began. I told you, he said, extending his hand to help her up, I'm a diplomat. We do our homework. As she took his hand, something shifted in the air between them, something neither had anticipated. Aftermath and assignment. The council demands an explanation for this humiliation, hissed Councillor Drex, his scaled fingers tapping an impatient rhythm on the polished stone table. Kalia stood before the Traxian High Council, her chin raised despite the shame burning in her chest. She had changed into a formal robe that bore her family's insignia, but nothing could disguise the blow to her pride. I underestimated the human, she admitted, the words bitter on her tongue. It won't happen again. Indeed it won't, said High Councillor Merrick, his ancient face creased with disapproval, because you've jeopardized our entire negotiation position. The humans now know our battle armor can be defeated with primitive weapons. Not primitive, Kalia corrected before she could stop herself. Precisely applied. There's a difference. The council chamber fell silent, 7 pairs of eyes narrowing at her defense of the humans' tactics. Perhaps the princess has developed an appreciation for our visitors, suggested Councillor Vex, her voice dripping with insinuation. Kalia's hands clenched beneath the table. I merely state facts. Underestimating them further would be foolish. High Councillor Merrick studied her for a long moment before sighing. Regardless, we must salvage these negotiations. The Earth Confederation controls resources we need, and they've established outposts too close to our borders for comfort. What would you have me do? Kalia asked. You created this mess, Merrick replied. You will fix it. The human Russell has requested a private audience with you. Grant it. Learn what he wants, what he knows about us. Charm him, if necessary. Kalia bristled at the implication but nodded stiffly. As you command. Chad Russell sat in the gardens of the Traxian royal palace, seemingly at ease despite being surrounded by alien flora that could probably kill him in a dozen different ways. Some of the carnivorous plants tracked his movements, their colorful blooms turning to follow him like hungry sentinels. He was examining a particularly vibrant blue flower when Kalia approached. That one's poisonous, she said by way of greeting. A single pollen grain can paralyze a full-grown Traxian. Chad withdrew his hand with a rueful smile. Thanks for the warning. I was just admiring the color, reminds me of Earth's oceans. Kalia took a seat on the bench opposite him, maintaining a formal distance. You requested this meeting. Speak your purpose. Direct. I appreciate that. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I want to understand why you forced that fight. Your people contacted Earth seeking an alliance, yet your first action was to try to humiliate our representative. It is Traxian custom to test the mettle of potential allies, she replied automatically. Chad snorted, the translator rendering his crude Earth expression perfectly. Your intelligence on humans is too good for you not to know we'd find that provocative. You wanted a fight. Kalia's jaw tightened. Perhaps I did. Why? She hadn't expected such directness, nor the genuine curiosity in his eyes. Most species approached her actions with either fear or fawning respect. Your kind expands too quickly, she finally said. In 3 generations, you've gone from a single planet to dozens of colonies. You make alliances with species we've spent centuries trying to subjugate. You disrupt the natural order. Chad nodded slowly. And you thought beating me in combat would, what? Slow human expansion. I thought demonstrating Traxian superiority would send a message. Instead, I sent one, he observed without arrogance. So where does that leave us? The question hung between them, weighted with implications. Kalia studied him more carefully now, the way he sat comfortably in alien surroundings, alert but not fearful, the way his eyes missed nothing. It leaves us at an impasse, she admitted. My council still wants this alliance, despite my miscalculation. And what do you want, princess? The question caught her off guard. What did she want? The alliance made strategic sense, but something deeper nagged at her, something she wasn't ready to examine too closely. I want to understand, she said finally. How did you learn to exploit the weaknesses in our armor? Our design specifications are among our most guarded secrets. Chad smiled slightly. Not guarded well enough, apparently. But if it makes you feel better, I didn't hack your systems or steal your plans. Then how? I watched recordings of Traxian warriors in battle, analyzed the energy fluctuations when your armor took damage, mapped the patterns. He shrugged. Basic observation. You learned all that from recordings? Kalia couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. Humans are good at pattern recognition. It's how we survived on Earth before we had technology, by noticing details, adapting quickly. Kalia absorbed this, a new respect reluctantly forming. And the weapon, the nunchaku, why bring such an archaic tool to a diplomatic mission? I practice with them to maintain focus. They're meditative. I never intended them as weapons for this trip. Yet you wielded them with mastery. 15 years of practice, he said with a modest shrug. They teach patience, precision, control, useful skills for a diplomat. A comfortable silence fell between them, surprising in its lack of tension. Kalia found herself studying his face, the strange, smooth skin, the eyes that shifted color slightly with the light. Would you show me? She asked suddenly. Show you what? How you use them, the nunchaku. She gestured vaguely. Not in combat. As, meditation. Chad raised an eyebrow. You want me to teach you? I want to understand, she corrected, though the distinction felt meaningless even to her. He considered her for a long moment before nodding. All right. But not here, among the deadly plants. Is there a training area we could use? Lessons and alarms. In the royal training chamber, Chad removed his formal jacket, revealing a simple black shirt beneath. From a pocket, he produced his nunchaku. The first lesson, he said, is that these aren't about strength. They're about focus. He began a slow demonstration, the wooden sticks flowing around his body in hypnotic patterns. Kalia watched, mesmerized by the grace of his movements. The second lesson, he continued, the nunchaku picking up speed, is that control comes from the center. He tapped his abdomen. Not from the hands. Without thinking, Kalia stepped closer. May I? Chad paused, then held out the weapon. Their fingers brushed as she took it, sending an unexpected current through her that had nothing to do with her armor's power systems. The nunchaku felt lighter than she'd expected, the wood smooth against her palm. She attempted to mimic his movement and nearly hit herself in the face. Chad laughed, not mockingly, but with genuine amusement. Everyone does that the first time. Here, he moved behind her, adjusting her grip, his hands guiding hers through the motion. Feel the rhythm of it. Don't fight the momentum, direct it. Kalia was acutely aware of his proximity, of the strange heat humans seemed to radiate, of the fact that no one had dared touch her so casually in years. Like this? She asked, executing a simple turn of the weapon. Exactly like that, he said, stepping back with approval in his eyes. Something shifted between them in that moment, something neither had anticipated when she challenged him in the arena. Not quite friendship, not quite attraction, but a recognition, a possibility. The training room door burst open, shattering the moment. Captain Thorne of the Royal Guard entered, his expression grim. Princess, he said, bowing stiffly, we've received an emergency transmission. The colony on Nexus Prime is under attack. Attack? By whom? Kalia demanded, instantly alert. Unknown vessels, dozens of them. They've already destroyed our orbital defenses. Chad stepped forward. Nexus Prime, that's the planet on your border with the Scarrow Dominion, isn't it? Kalia shot him a sharp look. You're well informed for a diplomat. He didn't flinch under her scrutiny. It's my job to know the political landscape. The Scarrow have been quiet for decades. Why would they attack now? We don't know it's them, Kalia said, though the timing seemed suspicious. She turned to Captain Thorne. Prepare my ship. We leave immediately. Princess, Thorne objected, the Council has ordered you to remain here and continue the negotiations while they... The Council is not here, Kalia cut him off. Nexus Prime is under my protection. I will not abandon them while bureaucrats debate. She turned to Chad, expecting him to withdraw to the safety of his diplomatic quarters. Instead, he was already putting his jacket back on. I'm coming with you, he said, as if it were already decided. This isn't your fight, human. If the Scarrow are involved, it might be. They've been probing Earth colonies too. His eyes met hers, serious now. Besides, you might need someone who's good at finding weaknesses in armor. Despite everything, Kalia felt a smile tug at her lips. Very well. But on my ship, you follow my orders. Wouldn't dream of doing otherwise, Princess. As they strode from the training room, Kalia realized she was still holding his nunchaku. She offered them back, but Chad shook his head. Keep them for now, he said. Something tells me you might need them. The Traxian warship Vindication dropped out of hyperspace above Nexus Prime. From the command deck, Kalia surveyed the carnage with narrowed eyes. Orbital defenses drifted in pieces above the northern continent. Unfamiliar vessels bombarded the surface with methodical precision. Those aren't Scarrow vessels, Chad said. The design is all wrong. Captain Thorne shot him an irritated glance. And you're an expert on alien ship design now, human. I've studied Scarrow technology, Chad replied evenly. They favor organic-looking ships. These are angular, mechanical. The attacking vessels resembled black crystalline structures, their surfaces absorbing rather than reflecting light. They're targeting the mining facilities, observed the tactical officer. Precision strikes only, avoiding population centers. Chad moved closer to Kalia. This isn't a conquest, it's a resource grab. She nodded. The question is, who are they, and why now? A transmission from the surface showed a harried colonial administrator. Princess, we're under attack by... We can see that, Kalia interrupted. Status report. They appeared without warning, no demands. They're targeting the duranium processing facilities. Our ground forces are engaging their landing parties, but their technology, we're outmatched. Hold your position. The Vindication will engage the enemy vessels and deploy reinforcements. Do not surrender the mines at any cost. As the transmission ended, Chad stepped closer. Duranium? Isn't that the energy-conducting mineral used in your battle armor? Kalia nodded, impressed again by his knowledge. And in our ship drives. Nexus Prime holds our largest reserves. So whoever these attackers are, they know exactly what they're after, Chad mused. And they chose a moment when your attention was diverted by diplomatic negotiations. Captain Thorne scowled. Are you suggesting this is connected to your arrival, human? Before Chad could respond, the tactical officer called out, Princess. 3 enemy vessels breaking formation and moving to intercept. Battle stations, Kalia ordered. Prepare to engage. As the crew rushed to their positions, she turned to Chad. If you're staying on the bridge, make yourself useful. You seem to notice patterns, see if you can identify any weaknesses in their ships. Chad nodded, moving to a secondary console. I'll do what I can. Kalia watched him for a moment, struck by how quickly he'd integrated himself into her mission. Then she turned her attention to the approaching enemy, her mind already calculating strategies and contingencies. Whoever these mysterious attackers were, they'd chosen the wrong day to challenge the Traxian Empire. The battle. The Vindication shuddered as enemy fire impacted its shields. On the bridge, Kalia gripped the command rail, her knuckles turning pale green with the pressure. "Shields at 60%, reported the tactical officer. "Their weapons are unlike anything we've encountered, some kind of focused energy that partially phases through our defenses." "Return fire," Kalia ordered. "Target their propulsion systems." The Traxian warship's particle cannons lashed out, striking one of the crystalline vessels. The enemy ship absorbed the blast with minimal damage, its black surface rippling like disturbed water before settling. "Minimal effect," the tactical officer said, frustration evident in his voice. Chad studied the sensor readings intently. "Their hull seems to be absorbing and redistributing the energy of our attacks. Traditional weapons might not be effective." Captain Thorne sneered. "And I suppose you have a better suggestion, human?" "Actually, yes." Chad pointed to a display showing the enemy ship's energy signature. "There's a pattern to how they redirect energy. If we could overload their absorption capacity, hit them with rapid, sequential bursts rather than sustained fire, we might be able to create a feedback loop in their systems." Kalia considered this. "Like how you defeated my armor?" Chad nodded. "Exactly. Find the pattern, exploit the rhythm." She turned to her weapons officer. "Reconfigure the particle cannons for pulsed bursts. Target a single vessel, maximum power, staggered intervals." As the crew hurried to implement the new strategy, Kalia addressed the communications officer. "Any response to our hails?" "None, Princess. They're ignoring all frequencies." A massive impact rocked the ship, throwing several crew members from their stations. "Shields at 40%, called the tactical officer. "They're concentrating fire on our starboard weapons array." "Evasive maneuvers," Kalia ordered. "Bring us about and prepare to engage with the modified weapons." The Vindication banked sharply, narrowly avoiding another barrage from the enemy vessels. As they came around, the weapons officer called out, "Pulse configuration ready, Princess. Target the lead vessel and fire." The Traxian warship's cannons discharged in a rapid series of concentrated bursts. The first few pulses were absorbed by the crystalline hull, but as the sequence continued, the enemy ship's surface began to flicker, areas of its structure becoming unstable. "It's working!" Chad exclaimed. "Their absorption capacity is reaching its limit." After the 12th pulse, a sudden change occurred, the enemy vessel's surface fractured, energy cascading through the cracks in its hull. Moments later, it exploded in a brilliant flash of light. A cheer erupted from the bridge crew, but Kalia remained focused. "Target the second vessel, same pattern." As the Vindication engaged the remaining ships, a new alert sounded. "Princess," called the sensor officer, "I'm detecting a large energy signature near the main uranium processing facility on the surface. It appears to be some kind of transport beam." "They're stealing the refined uranium," Kalia realized. "We need to get down there." She turned to Captain Thorne. "Continue the space battle. Chad and I will lead a ground team to secure the facility." Thorne's eyes widened. "Princess, that's too dangerous. Let me send." "This is not a discussion, Captain," Kalia cut him off. "The bridge is yours until I return." As they hurried toward the shuttle bay, Chad jogged alongside her. "You know this is probably a trap, right?" "Of course it is," she replied, not breaking stride. "But whoever these attackers are, they've made a critical mistake." "What's that?" Kalia's lips curved into a predatory smile. "They've made me angry." The shuttle descended through Nexus Prime's atmosphere, dodging sporadic fire from enemy ground positions. Through the viewport, Kalia and Chad could see the massive duranium processing facility, a sprawling complex of metallic structures surrounded by extraction equipment. Black armored figures moved methodically through the complex, placing devices on storage containers. "Boarding team, prepare for hot insertion," Kalia commanded, checking her sidearm. She had opted not to wear her ceremonial armor, instead choosing a lighter combat suit that offered more mobility. At her hip hung Chad's nunchaku. Chad raised an eyebrow at her choice of weapon but said nothing. He had armed himself with a Traxian blaster that seemed almost comically large in his human hands. "You know how to use that?" she asked. "Point and shoot." He shrugged. "I'm a quick study." The shuttle touched down with a jolt, its rear ramp descending before they had fully settled. Kalia led the charge, her squad of 8 elite guards following close behind. Chad brought up the rear, moving with surprising confidence for a diplomat in a combat zone. They encountered resistance immediately, 3 enemies in sleek black armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their helmets were featureless except for a single horizontal visor that glowed with an eerie blue light. "Cover!" Kalia shouted as energy blasts streaked toward them. She rolled behind a storage container, returning fire. Her shot struck one of the attackers, but like their ships, their armor seemed to absorb much of the energy. Chad crouched beside her, observing the enemies closely. Their armor works on the same principle as their ships. Conventional weapons won't be very effective. "Then what do you suggest?" Kalia asked, firing again to keep the attackers at bay. Chad's eyes narrowed. "We need to get closer. Like your armor, theirs probably has junction points, weak spots where the energy redistribution system is vulnerable. Getting closer means exposing ourselves to their weapons." "I'll create a distraction," Chad said. "When I give the signal, you take the left flank. Get in close and use the nunchaku, aim for the neck and joints." Before she could protest, Chad darted from cover, firing rapidly at the enemies. His shots weren't well aimed, but they served their purpose, drawing the attackers' attention. As they turned to focus on him, he dove behind a different container. "Now," he called. Kalia moved instantly, sprinting toward the leftmost attacker. The enemy soldier turned too late, bringing its weapon to bear just as she closed the distance. With a fluid motion that surprised even herself, she swung the nunchaku, striking the junction between the soldier's helmet and chest piece. There was a satisfying crack as the wooden weapon connected, followed by a shower of blue sparks as the armor's energy system overloaded. The attacker staggered, suddenly vulnerable, and Kalia's follow-up strike to the visor sent it crashing to the ground. Across the battlefield, Chad had somehow managed to get behind another attacker. Using his oversized blaster as a club, he struck the enemy's knee joint, then the back of its neck as it stumbled. Like the first, its armor sparked and failed. The third attacker, seeing its companions fall, raised its weapon toward Chad's exposed back. "Chad, down!" Kalia shouted, already in motion. He dropped instantly, allowing her to leap over him, nunchaku whirling. The wooden sticks connected with the attacker's wrist, causing its shot to go wide, then its neck joint. As its armor failed, Kalia delivered a final strike to its head, dropping it beside its companions. For a moment, they both stood breathing heavily, surrounded by fallen enemies. "Not bad," Chad said, a hint of admiration in his voice. "You're a quick study too." "I had a good teacher," she replied, allowing herself a small smile. "Now, let's secure that duranium before more of them arrive." Resolution. Kalia and Chad fought their way through the processing facility, their combat styles merging with surprising synergy. While her guards engaged larger groups of enemies, they focused on strategic targets, disabling key attackers with precise strikes to their armor's vulnerable points. "The main storage vault is through here," Kalia said, gesturing to a massive door at the end of a corridor. "That's where they'll be targeting their efforts." As they approached, the door slid open to reveal a sight that stopped them both in their tracks. Inside the vault, surrounded by containers of refined duranium, stood a tall figure in ornate black armor. Unlike the other attackers, this one's armor featured intricate patterns etched in glowing blue light. No helmet obscured its face, revealing features that made Kalia gasp. "Scarrow," she whispered. The figure turned, yellow eyes narrowing at their arrival. "Princess Kalia," it said, its voice deep and resonant. "I was wondering when you'd join us." Chad glanced between them. "Friend of yours?" "Warlord Drek," Kalia replied, her voice cold. "Leader of the Scarrow Dominion's Third Fleet. We've had encounters before." Drek smiled, showing sharp teeth. "Such diplomatic language. Your father killed mine in the Battle of Kelder Rift. I simply returned the favor during the Siege of Velter." Kalia's face hardened at the mention of her father's death. "So this is revenge? You allied with these, whoever they are, to steal our duranium?" "Not revenge, Princess. Evolution." Drek gestured to the strange technology integrated into his armor. "The Voidborn approached us with an offer, their technology in exchange for access to your resources. We get to defeat our ancient enemies, and they get the materials they need for their expansion." "The Voidborn?" Chad asked. "An old spacefarer's myth," Kalia murmured. "Beings said to exist in the spaces between stars, drawn to worlds rich in certain elements." "Not a myth," Drek corrected. "Simply patient. They've been watching us all for centuries, waiting for the right moment to emerge." He studied Chad with obvious disdain. "I see you found a human pet. How disappointing. Your ancestors would be ashamed to see a Traxian princess consorting with such primitives." Chad stepped forward. "This primitive helped destroy 3 of your ships and dozens of your soldiers. Maybe you should reconsider your definition of advanced." Drek laughed. Brave words from a species barely out of its cradle. His expression hardened as he turned back to Kalia. "This doesn't have to end in more bloodshed, Princess. The Voidborn only want the duranium. Surrender it, and your colony will be spared. And if I refuse? Then you'll join your father in oblivion." Drek raised his hand, and the blue patterns on his armor intensified. "This enhanced armor makes me 10 times stronger than any Traxian warrior. You cannot hope to defeat me." Kalia's eyes narrowed. "We'll see about that." She looked at Chad. "Together?" He nodded, readying himself. "Just like practice." They moved simultaneously, attacking from different angles. Drek was incredibly fast, his enhanced armor allowing him to parry Kalia's strikes while countering Chad's movements. A backhanded blow sent Chad crashing into a stack of containers, and a kick knocked Kalia across the room. "Pathetic," Drek sneered. "Is this truly the best the mighty Traxian Empire can offer?" Kalia rose slowly, wiping emerald blood from her lip. She glanced at Chad, who was also struggling to his feet, and saw him studying Drek's movements intently. "The pattern," he called to her, dodging another strike. "His armor, the energy flows in a sequence. Watch the lights." Kalia focused, seeing what Chad had already noticed. The glowing blue patterns on Drek's armor weren't just decorative, they showed the flow of power through the system. And like her own armor, like the enemy ships, there was a rhythm to it, a vulnerability if properly exploited. She tossed Chad the nunchaku. "Distract him." Without hesitation, Chad caught the weapon and engaged Drek, not trying to defeat him but to keep his attention, to make him use his armor systems continuously. The wooden sticks became a blur as Chad incorporated unpredictable movements, forcing Drek to constantly adjust his defenses. Meanwhile, Kalia circled behind them, timing her approach carefully. As the blue patterns on Drek's back pulsed in a specific sequence, she struck, hitting 3 junction points in rapid succession. Drek roared in fury as sparks erupted from his armor. He whirled to face her, but the damage was done. Parts of his enhanced suit began to malfunction, the smooth movements becoming jerky and uncoordinated. "Now!" Kalia shouted. Chad's nunchaku connected with the back of Drek's knee, causing the joint to lock. As the warlord staggered, Kalia delivered a precise kick to his chest, sending him crashing to the floor. His armor continued to spark and fail around him. Impossible, Drek gasped, struggling to rise. How? Pattern recognition, Chad said, retrieving his nunchaku. You should try it sometime. Kalia stood over the fallen warlord. It's over, Drek. Your Voidborn allies are being defeated in orbit, and your ground forces are in retreat. As if to confirm her words, the facility shook slightly as distant explosions echoed. Kalia's communicator crackled to life with Captain Thorne's voice, "Princess, we've destroyed the remaining enemy vessels. The colony is secure." Drek glared up at them, hatred burning in his yellow eyes. This isn't over. The Voidborn are patient. They will return, and next time. Next time, Kalia interrupted, they'll face not just the Traxian Empire, but our allies as well. She glanced at Chad. Including the humans. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. 1 week later, Kalia stood in the grand ceremonial hall of the Traxian Royal Palace. The High Council sat on elevated seats behind her, and before her stood the assembled dignitaries of the Earth Confederation, with Chad Russell at their center. On behalf of the Traxian Empire, Kalia proclaimed, her voice carrying through the vast chamber, I am honored to formalize our alliance with the Earth Confederation. Together, we will stand against the Voidborn threat and any who would ally with them. High Counselor Merrick stepped forward, looking both pleased and slightly uncomfortable. The Council unanimously approves this alliance, he announced. Our intelligence suggests the Voidborn have approached other species as well. We will need all the allies we can gather for the coming conflict. As the formal proceedings continued, Kalia found her gaze repeatedly drawn to Chad. He stood tall among his fellow diplomats, his simple Earth attire a stark contrast to the elaborate uniforms of both human and Traxian officials. When their eyes met, he offered her a small smile. Later, as the gathered dignitaries mingled during the celebratory reception, Chad approached her in a quiet corner of the hall. So, he said, from combat to alliance in just 2 weeks. Not bad for a diplomatic mission that started with me getting laughed at. Kalia felt a smile tug at her lips. Perhaps I was too quick to judge your sticks on a string. Nunchaku, he corrected. And I think you've mastered them quite well. Captain Thorne told me you've been practicing every day. I find them meditative, she admitted. They teach patience, precision, control. Useful skills for a princess, he suggested. For anyone, she replied. After a moment's hesitation, she added, the Earth Confederation will be sending a permanent diplomatic delegation, I understand. Chad nodded. They've asked me to head it. Someone needs to stay and ensure this alliance gets off to a proper start. A wise choice, Kalia said, surprised by how pleased she felt at this news. You've proven yourself, observant. Speaking of observation, Chad said, his voice dropping lower, I've noticed something interesting about Traxian royalty. Oh. And what might that be? They're quick studies. Adaptable. Not unlike humans, in some ways. Kalia considered this. Perhaps that's why we'll make good allies. And perhaps, Chad suggested, we might continue those training sessions. I still have much to teach you about nunchaku. And I have much to teach you about Traxian combat techniques, she countered. Chad's smile widened. I look forward to it, Princess. As they stood together, watching the mingling dignitaries, humans and Traxians cautiously beginning to interact, to understand one another, Kalia reflected on how quickly things had changed. From mockery to respect, from combat to cooperation, from enemies to, whatever they were becoming. She had laughed at his primitive weapon, and minutes later her supposedly advanced armor had lain in pieces around her. But from that humbling moment had come something unexpected, an alliance that might save both their peoples from the threats that lurked in the darkness between stars. And perhaps something more. The end.